Good evening, all. Hopefully, we can hear each other. For some
Hello,
reason,
hello.
I'm not getting audio back. I'm going to check and make sure you got audio. Just turn up your volume on the feed.
Hello, hello. No.
Okay. I don't know why we're not getting
Oh,
monitored
wait, I got it for a second there.
right now. Apologize. The joys of new things. So this is the first time we're streaming from not our space, which came with some complications. But so we don't need these because for whatever reason they're not working. Nope, you need your mic, so
Okay.
you don't need your earpiece. I guess we don't need them much because we're in the same room. But so here we are, another episode of what we're calling the dominance dialogues for now. The big focus is 301 level topics, diving more into the psychology and the mental aspects of what we do. Today, we're going to discuss BDSM and pop culture and how it has influenced some of the things and our interactions with others, and our interactions with social media, I think. I'm not sure where we'll go, I guess. But we got boy next door, Will.
What's up, y'all? Shout out to my brats, my friends, my family, my followers. I love y'all. I love this guy.
I love you too, homie.
Out here doing big things.
I'm trying. It's actually kind of crazy. We've known each other for what, 3-4 years now?
Yep, about that.
Met in social media.
Yep. I couldn't believe you thought I was cool.
I couldn't believe you thought I was cool.
I was like, ain't no way. This dude with all these rope skills thinks I'm cool.
And I was like, this guy with all these brats thinks I'm cool. all right, enough accolades. So we'll just kind of, let's get started. So we'll start with like the first question, the 10,000 foot question. How did you get started in BDSM?
Well, I think I had some of my first fantasies and experiences with non-descriptive BDSM as early as pre-K. Nap time, I fantasize about CNC scenes, and I didn't even know what those acts were yet.
Really?
Yeah, and it was
really
that early. I was stuck to the cots, and even the teacher and my fellow, yeah. And these were what I would draw in nap time. And I was submissive in those when I was younger. And then when I hit puberty, those kind of flipped on their head and it became more dominant in fantasy. And obviously, you know, growing as a young boy and a bit of a player, you got to live out some of those things. And then you start to pick up on that there's a world for this and descriptors and there's names for it and there's proper ways to do it.
Get the camera.
And yeah, so that's pretty much how I got into it.
What do you think influenced you so early on?
Nothing. You know, they talk a lot about a lot of people talk about trauma being what induces a lot of this stuff, and I have not found that to be true. I had good parents. I mean, every parent's not the greatest when they're generationally different, but like I had good parents, no abuse, nothing ever happened to me, and I think that it's a rather human thing to enjoy at least these fantasies in some type of, at least a fantasy. And I tend to find that even vanilla people practice BDSM in small doses, micro doses. So I think it's a rather human thing. I don't think anything like influenced me per se. Now, when I got older into my teen years, you do see the pop culture influence around, and so you see like the bubblegum, I call it bubblegum BDSM. you know. And then I think probably say mid-20s is really when I guess I would call it like brat culture started kind of popping up. And yeah.
Was that when you started your social media page?
Yeah, I started my social media page, I think close to 5 years ago, four and some change. And but I had been making memes for even longer than that. I'd probably say 2 years before that. But I was just making them on my personal page, and people were cracking up at them, and they were like, and also I had friends and family seeing them,
Yeah.
and so I was like,
right.
oh, some of these are pretty you know, I like to push buttons, I like to ride the edge, I like to be sophisticated but vulgar. So I really like to push buttons with my memes, and I started doing them on my personal page, and I was like, I could do this. So people were like, you need to make a page for this, you need to make a meme page for this. And I was like, okay, we'll see how it goes. And so I went ahead and made one, and I already knew of a few groups, like Facebook groups that existed, and I would share my memes into those, and they just hit like wildfire and took off. And that's kind of how my page grew with it.
So why'd you start making memes?
I
The
guess
pussy or ego? Come on.
I think connection, really.
Really?
Yeah, all those were great. Those definitely, I mean, they rubbed my ego. I got lots of attention for it, but really it was just like the connection. And it was so funny seeing the most specific things I would do in some of my memes like hit with so many people. And that was just lovely. And just laughing about something that we all do in either bed or in our dynamics, kinky dynamics with each other, laughing about that with someone, laughing about something that no one's ever talked about or really mentioned it in this way from an angle that no one's ever looked at it at is just beyond heartwarming. And you know, in my particular town, there's not a huge scene. Most of the people I had to connect with were online about it, and
So it was about building community.
sorta, yeah.
I mean, you definitely have your own little community. I mean, you have a little army of brats, like, that are very loyal, right? And I think it's maybe, I don't know, I could just speculate, but from my perspective is, like you said, you poke fun at some of the harder stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not like a particular fan of brats, and then I find myself getting sucked into the fun. You know, I don't even really like it that much, and next thing I know, I'm like laughing and smiling with one. And so, you know, I made a lot of these memes to kind of poke fun at brats, to tease them, be ornery. um, I was actually thinking I would rub more feathers and irk people's buttons, and I've certainly done that along the way. But to my surprise, you know, about 4.5 years ago when I started making my memes, these brats did not get angry. They loved it. Um, they came back for more. They shit talked right back. They pressed my buttons. They love to play this game, and I'm poking stuff at them that's pretty tough, and they bounced. They jumped right in on the game with me, and
So you
dished it
enjoy
right
the
back.
banter.
I enjoy the banter. I enjoy it. Yeah.
It is fun when it's done respectfully, right?
Yeah, when it's done respectfully, and also, you know, I don't know how much. I mean, I love like playful banter in, you know, my relationships, but I don't know if I like that much pushback on rules and things like that. And so,
So what you're saying is you just want to service submissive.
I prefer service submissive. Yeah, but I love a funny one.
Yeah.
I love a funny one.
You gotta have fun.
Of course.
I mean, we're humans,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and like you can't take any of this too seriously. And I think that's some of the the fantasy that we see portrayed in either social media or movies, right? Is this fantasy of these dominant and submissive creatures that are just always in this perfect headspace, right? And there's none of this banter, there's none of the human emotion or human interaction.
That's true. And I mean, it also, I guess, depends on the movie, the way it's portrayed, in the way it's portrayed. So, because we had all different types of ways that BDSM is portrayed in movies and TV shows and stuff. And then sometimes the just little bits that actually show up in a fraction of a movie that only if you're a kinkster you would catch note of that.
I mean, so that leads right into like the first question is, how do you feel that BDSM has been portrayed in social media and Hollywood?
Well, I guess to sum it up, what the BDSM people are going to tell you is they're really mad. It's unfair. It's not portrayed right. They're not doing it right. It's not done with consent. They're not writing out contracts. They're not writing out rules. They're not stating this. The power balance is all wrong. This person is a teacher and this person is a this, and this guy is rich and this person, and they're really angry about these things. And I understand it, but also let people enjoy things. And a lot of what we love about our movies and TV shows and books is that they're fantasy. And I've seen a lot of people, especially girls, go and they hate 50 Shades of Grey. And they repeat the talking narrative about how it's not an accurate portrayal of BDSM. It's not. And people like it anyway.
But it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think the film director admitted that they didn't have a fundamental understanding of the BDSM community. They were just making a movie on a hot topic.
Yeah, they didn't need to, and they knew what was hot to people. And these same people that get angry and frustrated with the portrayal of BDSM in 50 Shades of Grey also seem to love Twilight.
Where you got what's the guy's name in Twilight? He's 100 years older.
100 years old. She's a high school girl. I mean, he's got his
boyish good looks, but he's 150 years old.
Yep, and he's 1,000 times smarter and stronger than her, and
so every bit of a power imbalance.
Definitely, and it's hot.
It is hot.
It's hot. That's why people like them. That's why people like 50 Shades of Grey. BDSM community is gonna be blue in the face until they wither away over their anger towards it, because people are still going to find this stuff hot.
But the thing is like, from my perspective, I'm data driven, right? And don't quote me on these numbers, but prior to 50 Shades of Grey, FetLife community had somewhere around 500,000 members. And within 12 months of the release of 50 Shades of Grey, it spiked to somewhere around 2 million members. So for all the bad that it did, what it did do is it brought BDSM, master slave, sadomasochism. It brought a lot of these terms into the common household, right? So we have to be thankful for that. Because of that, we're able to have a podcast like this. Because of this, we're able to have social media pages like this. 10 or 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Well, first of all, social media wasn't a thing, right? But if we go back, I don't know when the DSM-4 was, but DSM-4, a lot of what we do, it would have been a clinical diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, it normalized us in a lot of ways. Now, it watered us down in some ways. It brought some people that are unsafe into the community. It brought people that are really eager and excited but don't know what they're doing in the community too. But it did a lot of good. It normalized us. We can talk about things we normally couldn't talk about. Yeah, so...
So what do you think are some of the dangers of the inaccurate or the sensationalized portrayals of BDSM in movies like 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight?
Well, I think some of the dangers would be in how quickly people do accept really strong power imbalances. Um, but also, I think the like bubblegum BDSM culture does bring in things that are unsafe sometimes, you know. So, like, I don't know. For instance, you got a guy that's, he doesn't know anything about safety and he's just pulling out knives and ropes on a girl that hasn't been properly informed about, what's going on, and he doesn't even really know what's going on. And maybe these people are both good natured and good hearted and want the best out of the experience, and they respect each other's consent, but they don't know that they could be potentially doing something that's unsafe. You also get overly eager people that sometimes put themselves in dangerous situations. I've seen girls that try to, I guess, gain points with me by just, basically the old classic, I have no limits kind of thing. And it's like, well, what if I want to hit your shin with a scooter? You got limits then? Like, even yeah, even your most experienced kinkster and pain sluts don't want a scooter to the shin. So like you can potentially end up, and I know they were good hearted when they said it. They just wanted to please me. They were excited. And I've had girls just say things off the wall to impress me, like, I just love knives and blood. And I'm just thinking, like, first, like, you don't even know if that's what I like. Two, you probably not even played with knives or blood. And three, like, that could be unsafe for both of us. Um, and I think it just brings in people like that who are just eager and excited sometimes and not really thinking twice about what they're doing or the dangers of it or the safety.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, like, you've known me for long enough. With my rope, it's one thing when you see the picture, but to know what actually goes in behind that, right? It's easy to appreciate that picture and just see that surface level, that beauty, but not know what it takes to get there, and to be so eager to try to be in that rope or be in that moment, right?
Absolutely.
And this is like something that I've been conscious of as I put more and more content out and as I've gotten bigger, is to try to break that fantasy versus reality. And that's part of the reason why I started doing live suspensions, because if you watch me, almost I'm gonna go ahead and say it, almost every live suspension I've done, I've untied something, I've changed something, I've fixed something, right? Nonetheless,
You know what you're doing. You know the knots that work. You know the arteries you have to dodge. I mean, you know the ligament, like how fulcrums work, and
yeah, but I mean that what we're getting, but back to like the fantasy is like, I know that, but the people that watch my page or follow my page, they don't know what all goes behind it. And that goes back to like the topic of the fantasy versus reality. When we look at the fantasy of 50 Shades of Grey or The Secretary or Story, or of these just like completely crazy fantasized power imbalances, right? They're, like you said, it's one thing to fantasize about it, and it's really good to be able to have that, and there should be space for that. But there also needs to be like the reality shown that like the day-to-day power imbalance relationship or power dynamic, authority-based relationship, dominance of whatever you want to call it. I always say at the beginning of the day, you start a human. At the end of the day, you end a human. What you're in are in between is up to you and your people, right? Um, and I think that from my perspective, like, not to steal a show, but is like, that's the biggest danger, is that fairy tale, right? Of, you got some rich, handsome entrepreneur person that drives a different Ferrari every day, right? And this is what defined dominance.
yeah.
I that's fantasy. I think I'll end my little soapbox moment here with, I don't believe dominance has anything to do with experience. I think it has everything to do with desire.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And that fantasy can be dangerous. Like I said, overeager people. You know, if you just think that this guy with 2 Porsches and lots of money is Dom because he told you so. You might find out pretty quickly. If you think going for your college teacher is a great idea, you might find out pretty quick. I mean, people find out if you if you think you can do a suspension with rope, you're gonna find out pretty quickly you can't.
One way or the other.
And hopefully no one gets hurt along the way, but people are doing these things with or without these movies. And you know, so definitely, you know, I encourage people, you know, with fantasies, like get off on these movies, enjoy it. Just let people enjoy things. That's one of the most bones. That's the most bone I have to pick with the BDSM community. Let people enjoy things, and I could literally act like every other single BDSM person and influencer in this world and just be like, Secretary is more accurate and 50 Shades of Grey is bad. And I've seen hundreds upon hundreds of BDSM people saying that same narrative, and people in groups that never watch either of them saying the same narrative. They're just repeating the talking parrots because it now makes them look informed to say what the other person said. And then they can write like 10-page hypotheses on every single detail of why 50 Shades of Grey was bad. And you know, so I hate to break it to the BDSM world, but sometimes they look like the actually meme. Like, I don't know if you ever seen the meme of the guy and he's sitting there and he's pushing his glasses up and he goes, well, actually, sometimes the BDSM people do look like that. Now, it's great that we have a community that's based around consent and informing people and making sure people are safe. But if you look like the guy that watches the Spider-Man movie and you know, you go, well, Peter Parker actually didn't wear that suit until episode 3 in the comic books, and he didn't meet Mary Jane until episode 4. And so this is actually an inaccurate portrayal of Spider-Man because he didn't get the web slinger until comic book 4 of episode. Like, you look like that sometimes. And BDSM world, let's face it, a lot of them are not living in reality either. They're delulu. They have demands out the wazoo.
Well, I think that's kind of, you're starting to get almost segue into the next question. So we'll just go ahead and get there. And as, how do you feel that pop culture has influenced the people that are inside of the BDSM community?
That's an interesting one. I think it made them, well, okay, there's some positive to it because we now have more room to be ourselves. That, like we discussed that earlier, that is an amazing thing to feel. Where, you know, we have a discreet collar in our dynamic, but even if we didn't, I mean, we could go to Walmart and people don't really think twice about that anymore. Let's see. So there's a lot. We can make goofy jokes on the internet about sex nowadays, and people don't, you know, think it's twice as much as they used to. You know, you could, I don't know. You know, someone might know you had some cuffs in your house and not think you're this deranged person that needs to be locked up anymore. So these are good things. But also, yeah, it has made the BDSM community more tense. It has made them less fun. And yeah, I guess, I don't know, nitpicky. I feel like a very in-group, out-group.
So you think that pop culture has influenced BDSM to be more cliquey?
Yeah, more clicky, more, I mean, yeah, basically, if you don't know every single acronym or every single, yeah, if you don't know every single acronym, you don't know BDSM, right? It doesn't matter if you've been in a dynamic for 4 years. If you don't know all the acronyms, you don't know the ABCs of this, you don't know, then you know less than me. I'm more BDSM than you. And yeah.
So you think that, like, to some level, pop culture has maybe, like, made some people feel that there's some level of, like, social metric that determines, like, where you are inside of the BDSM community?
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
even if you're even allowed in the BDSM community?
Yeah. And I know because I've also experienced it myself, right? Like I've seen somebody really eager and they're talking and they don't know a lot, right? And I wanna put them in the out group and be like, you know what I mean? You don't belong, you know? And like, that's rude. That's rude to do. And I really should embrace them and be like, hey, let's talk and learn about that. Have you ever heard about this? And, you know, so that's what I should do. Now, we all know things are easier said than done. But, you know, I know I've experienced times where you see somebody that's very pop culture BDSM things. Like sometimes I see, you know, girls with the pentagram chest harness thing, and it has not much utilitarian function. I mean, it might look pretty. Some of the things you can order off Amazon, and they look like they are tangled the second you open the box. Are probably a pain to put on. They might look pretty, and they give the appearance that you do BDSM, but they don't have any practical use or anything. And sometimes I see silly stuff, or you see the guy and he takes a picture in a black, and he gets a black and suit with a red tie.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's dominant.
Yeah, that's dominant.
I'm
right?
pretty sure, what's that, Spirit Halloween? I think they have, like, that Halloween costume, you know?
That's you know, like, I wouldn't even be surprised if Spirit Halloween literally sold a costume for that.
For dominant and submissive.
Yeah.
If not, then maybe, you know, after the show they will. So I guess that kind of leads into a different question later, but it makes sense to ask now, is like, so with all these like crazy depictions in social media and pop culture of BDSM, like, how can we actually, like, um gauge the actuality of the situation? Know that, like, this isn't the fantasy 50 Shades Mr. Grey dominant. This isn't the guy that just has the experience or whatever, or is faking the experience, but this is a guy that actually, or a girl or a person that actually has a desire.
How to tell if someone that's a well, I think this is something that people even in the BDSM community still struggle with. They struggle with that before pop culture really brought an influx of people, and they'll struggle with it even if it never happened. But I guess gauging whether or not someone has the desire is when they're, you know, they're eager to learn. Somebody should not, if someone's real eager and they're maybe doing something wrong, if they're approached kindly and warmly and, you know, told, hey, maybe try this, they should be excited to get the new information. I know, learning about BDSM, there was nothing. I was so excited to learn. The more I was like reading, reading little articles, you know, I loved it, and I feel like someone should be excited to learn something new, and not feel personally attacked if they're told maybe try this, or doing this is probably a safer way, or doing this way is a more conscious way. This way considers consent and the safety and anxieties of your sub or dominant more. And I think if someone, you know, respectful, eagerness, and a desire to
Grow, it sounds like.
grow and get what they want, and make sure the other person gets what they want too.
I know, I definitely agree with all those statements. I mean, I've read all the books, or maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And I've actually gained more value from books outside of the BDSM community. Books on communication, books on leadership, right? I mean, if you want to get into dominance and submission, I mean, it's simple Pavlov's dog, right? You know, A good girl in the right moment will get you a lot. We'll just, or a good boy or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What do we want to go to now? So this one I think is good for us is since we are both content creators. What is do you do anything to like to take some responsibility for your representation of the BDSM community?
You know, I have felt in the past really boxed in by trying to appease the BDSM community. And I have found that I don't fit I don't fit the perfect square for them as well as they want me to sometimes. So I make these I make a beautiful meme, and it's got 3 layers of consent ingrained into it. It's got a, and those just take off, and the BDSM community loves it. I make a meme about maybe a characteristic a fake dom has, and it takes off in the BDSM community. They love it. But then I make a joke about things that happen in real life, such as someone cheating on their partner, and it's the end of the world. I make a joke about not using protection. It's the end of the world. Just things. I also like to joke about reality, and not to say that we shouldn't strive to have a more utopian ideal for our sex lives and for our BDSM dynamics. But we also have to acknowledge that's not what exists, and we don't always live up to those standards. And I don't even live up to the standards that I want to set for myself. And I wouldn't try to hold everyone else up to those standards too. And so the BDSM community loves me when they love me. They hate me when I don't want to fit in for them. There's been,
I don't think you can say the BDSM community. I'm not trying to correct you, but I think like we use that word wrong.
it's so broad. Yeah,
It's wrong.
you're right.
Like in my head, the best way I've been able to like frame it is high school, right?
Yeah.
Like, look, you're in West Virginia high school, right? And I went to Chicago high school, right? We were all in high school, but we might not have played the same sports. We didn't even go to the same states. We might not even have met each other. We definitely didn't like each other. That's okay. There's some commonalities, right? And I think that's where like you have carved your own niche, and not even your own niche, but you found your own community inside of a bigger community, right? Your memes and your banter or your flavor of dominance or your style of BDSM is not going to be for everybody, but that's part of what BDSM is. In my opinion, the core of BDSM, like if I summed it up in one word, would be rebel, right? To rebel against the societal norm, right? And then now, since I think that the BDSM community has like grown so big, we've almost created our own norms in society of the outcasts, so to say, or the rebels. Now the rebels are starting to get their own uniform. Wait a second, we all just used to wear our own clothes. Whatever we thought, whatever BDSM meant to us, that was okay, as long as there were some key facets that were important: consent, communication, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And just like every institution, as it grows big, it kind of falls apart sometimes, or it sets rules so stringent it has trouble living up to them. Yeah, yeah, and so I guess speaking of the BDSM community as a whole, I guess that's not really fair, but there is kind of a like broad spectrum of things. So there's been times where I have been told I'm part of the BDSM community and I need to start doing this and act like it, or I need to stop joking about that. And you know, you know, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm still me, you know.
You're not a submissive. You don't listen to when other people tell you what to do.
No, I'm not a yeah,
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought we were having some like
yeah,
revelation.
they want me to, you know, I guess they see the influence I have on people, and I do, you know, I make sure I use my memes to, in turn, at times, you know, add layers that kind of show the appropriate ways to do things, that show about informed consent. I do add memes that do a lot of that make fun of the characteristics of fake doms, that make fun of the toxic um, things. But I also make memes that acknowledge the toxic things that we all do, and we deny we do, and we pretend we don't do, that we still do, and that we still struggle with. And you know, I guess, you know, sometimes people feel like when you have that much influence on people, you shouldn't joke about those things. You don't, you know, but there's some things you just gotta laugh about because they're just so real.
Well, a little bit of my perspective on like being a content creator is that the public puts like a lot of projection of what they feel that you should do on you without necessarily having an understanding of what it is that you actually do. I mean, like it's easy for rope to talk about like a purple limb or circulation loss, and that's really not a big deal if you know everything. I'm not going to get lost in the rope, but the thing is like with what you're saying is like you are you, and that's one of the reasons why I genuinely love you is you're unapologetically you. You're one of the most authentic people I know, good, bad, and ugly, right? And you're not going to resonate with everybody, but you've shown that the people that you do resonate with, they're there beyond. And I would imagine that as many people that have tried to impose some negative thought process or not negative, impose some responsibilities on you, I'm sure there's another whole group of people that are very thankful that you've been able to shed light on the BDSM community in a way that they were able to perceive it because nobody else does.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
and I think, unfortunately, sometimes for the BDSM community, more people resonate with me because it's a little bit more realistic. And, you know, for instance, like, you know, you can make 100 memes about informed consent and 100 memes that promote the BDSM utopian ideal. But you make a meme about that urge to go through your partner's phone in a toxic way. And God forbid, everyone in the BDSM community has now never in their lives done that. And such thing is such an abuse of power. And it's like, come on now. We all know we've been there. If you've not done it, you felt the urge. There's certain things that like are real and urges we feel. And it's okay to laugh at them, acknowledge them, joke about them. And so, yeah, more people are going to resonate with me when I'm joking about that stuff. And I know it could be frustrating for somebody that's in the BDSM community that is real adamant about promoting positivity and making sure things are done right and we're portraying ourselves in a positive way. And then seeing me doing all these positive things, and then boom, now I'm laughing about going through your partner's phone. Like, that I can get why that might suck, because it's like, oh, did your dreams die in me? They should already have been dead. Please don't put your dreams on me. I'm not some savior out here to save the kink community. I'm just a regular dude. I incorporate BDSM into my life, but I'm not Mr. Perfect. I never was trying to be.
you didn't
I
write
fail
like I thought
constantly.
you wrote like the Brat Bible or
Yeah,
something.
they think I wrote the Brack Bible, everything. Yeah.
Oh. Well, and that's once again like I think that's the exact reason why I wanted to discuss this topic with you, because you're very realistic on your page. I mean, you don't just share like the "I'm gonna spank your butt" meme, or "I'm gonna spank your butt" picture, or whatever, or "get on your knees and submit," or uh you have a lot of layers, like you are as a human, right? And I think people see that, and it's almost, it's interesting to watch, because I see sometimes on your page you'll post something that'll ruffle somebody's feathers, right? And then you'll see like your day ones, or the people that have been around, that have actually watched you grow and know you to some level as a human, more than just like some content creator, because you don't just post content, you post you, right? Like some of it's funny, some of it's serious, some of it's offensive maybe to some people, I don't know, but it's you. um and it's honestly kind of, mm, I'm not even gonna lie, there's a few times I've been a little bit envious of your brats, because they're just, they're so in love with you, and I think like,
Don't be envious. They're miserable. All right. They're still trying to find that dom that's gonna put up with their nonsense.
yeah,
Hopefully they do, because they are tormenting me every day until they do. And sometimes they get in trouble, because even when they find one, they still try to torment me, and they get in trouble for it.
I don't think it's envious. I'm not
I
sure
know, you're
exactly how
just
to explain
goofing.
that, but it's like, it's admirable. Maybe that's the word I'm thinking of. It's because it's like, I see other people being able to be authentic around you, and this is something I've thought about before. Is like, when you shine your light, you allow the people around you to shine their light as well, right? Some people might squint, but other people will see that you can shine your light, and it's okay, so they can shine it.
Yeah.
And
And for me, the BDSM community did that for me. When I found out there were words and a world and definitions, um, for some of the things that I was already thinking about or fantasizing about, or practicing in weird, like normal, practical kind of ways, it was so nice being able to put like, oh my gosh, this is already happening with people, and they've got like a way to do it that is like consensual for all parties, in a nice anxiety-free way that protects me and it protects them. And like, I'm like, this is amazing.
so did it give you like some feeling of acceptance?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, when I first found the BDSM community, it gave me a feeling of acceptance. One, that I wasn't weird, because obviously you have little fantasies like that in pre-K. You start to think you're a little weird. And some of the urges of things that I wanted to do or try were, I've even had girls shaming me, like, why would you even like that? Why would you want that? Um, I've had that shamed on me. I've had people outside kind of think I was weird for some of the things that I said I like. But I've had a lot of people that also were like me, that had those feelings just like me. And I was able to introduce to them a world that gave me something to cling on to when I felt like a weirdo.
So more so self-acceptance and community acceptance.
Self-acceptance, community, I guess. I don't know how to explain what it would be like to, I don't know. It would be like, I don't know. It would be like you've only ever seen one comic book in your entire life, and then you find out that there's thousands of different comic books. And you just get to read them all. And you're really excited about it.
That's a pretty interesting analogy.
And you're already you thought you were alone because you're already like, most people don't even like comic books.
Yeah.
I really love this, and I love the imagery, and I love the storylines, and I love the virtue. And then you're like, it stinks. Like, not a lot of people like comic books. And then you walk into a comic shop, and then it's just everywhere, multiple different heroes, multiple different storylines, multiple different writing. And that's kind of what it felt like discovering the BDSM world as a a late teen, early 20s kind of person that was already, and it probably saved me a lot of trouble too, because it helped me find ways to do things that were more socially acceptable, more kind, more considerate. It helped me verbalize what I wanted easier. It helped me to, yeah. So it was great. It was great discovering that. And another thing I've noticed with my page too, some of my memes that are kind of ghetto, a little just, ghetto and regular ass obnoxious ghetto memes that are like a little sexual, not necessarily BDSM per se, they take off into the regular world, spaces. And the people that were like me, they hit that like button, they dive into my page, and they find a group of people that are BDSM enthusiasts and BDSM minded. And they get to find us.
Well, and that's interesting because, like, I don't know how to get like that, find that metric, but I would speculate most of my followers have never even really heard of FetLife or some of these other more popular places for the BDSM community. And as we're moving forward as a culture and a society, like, social media is getting more and more ingrained into us, and this is where we get a lot of our information now, right? I mean, and it's really interesting to think about that like you said, that you reached the vanilla public, right? And this is something that a lot of us don't get to do, is to help, I don't want to say like be the lighthouse, but to almost be a lighthouse, and to be out there and be public and say, hey, you know, we're just normal humans. We do some things in private and maybe some things in public, but we're just normal. And I think that as we move forward as a society, BDSM is going to be more and more normalized. Um, what do you think the potential is good and bad as BDSM gets more normalized inside of not only media, but inside of like general relationships?
We definitely have to make sure. I think it's going to do good for regular relationships, because a lot of people practice BDSM in small forms in ways they don't even really know. Even vanilla people I know practice. I've never met a vanilla man. He could be anti BDSM, a vanilla man whose wife grabs onto his arm and squeezes tight when they're walking through Walmart, and he doesn't feel like the most badass king of the world.
Yeah.
And I've never met a regular vanilla woman that doesn't love when their husband calls them love or baby.
Some
Pet names.
Or, I mean, role play. Like, so many people don't even think about it. But, like, how many vanilla people have the schoolgirl outfit fetish?
Oh, yeah. It's because it's just like, that's part of the bubblegum BDSM picking up to them. They're like, well, things, we need to spice them up. What can we do? They go on down to the porn store to look at cheapo, junky, little toys. And they're like, ooh, a schoolgirl outfit. And the husband's like, he says, yeah, he doesn't care what outfit it is. He's just excited to see her eager.
Yeah.
And, she puts it on. She loves seeing how excited he was. And he loves seeing how eager she was. And boom, It's born.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, I ran into this with a guy at work one time at one of my painting gigs, and he was just a regular old kind of guy, rather anti-BDSM from what I picked up. And you know, he found out a little bit about me, and he was just like, "That is wild. Oh my gosh, you're into that? Like, that's really strange." And he really thought something a little funky of me. And you know, even the BDSM world has got picked up by pop culture and then accepted into vanilla people's lives, and they don't even know. So I was like, buddy, does your girl like when you put your hand around her throat? You know? And of course, yeah, she does. And I'm like, interesting. So do you actually want to kill her when you put your hand around her? Oh, and he's like, no. I'm like, interesting. Do you think she actually wants to die when you do that? He's like, no. I'm like, all right. So this is the world we're now in. Just because I want to tie myself up doesn't mean I want to immobilize. I'm some sick freak. Like, it's not like that. It's given into this urge that we all have. And this is why I think most humans are naturally kinky. A lot of people say most of us have trauma. I think that's just been a narrative that is picked up. And I know a lot of people have experienced trauma in our community, and they use BDSM as a way to reclaim that power. I think a lot of us just have a natural urge. Like, it's just something that feels good. Like when I described the guy getting his arm squeezed by his wife, and he feels good, and he feels like he could protect her, and he loves how she's just leaning. That is dom sub right there to a T. The more wholesome aspects of it. A girl loving her man putting her vanilla man putting his hand around her throat. That feeling of being like stuck under his will, unable to move. This man could hurt me, but he's not. I have to do what he like. That just feels good to a vanilla person. And I think more humans have that than they want to acknowledge. And maybe the people who are really anti-BDSM, one of the reasons why they're so angry and loud about it is probably because they feel gross about their own desires that they have.
Maybe.
And because I can't think of why someone would be so angry at what we do when it's consensual.
I think some people just like to be angry for whatever
That's
reason.
true.
Right?
That's definitely true.
I think that there is something to be said with like most of us are kinky, and I think more so I think some of it has to do with like how we have changed as a culture, right? And how our lifespans have extended, and you know, when you're with someone for so long, you don't want to get stuck into some kind of routine. Most humans' brains don't really like routine too well. We like a little bit of excitement in our life, and I think BDSM affords a lot of opportunity for that, because I've been in the community for quite some time, and I still get excited all the time about all kinds of new things. I mean, just the other day I did rope. I've been doing rope for a very long time, and I did like a double bamboo suspension, and I'm like a little kid, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like that's, I don't want to speak too far out of turn, but there's been like some weird relationship dynamics.
If you ever need someone to speak out of turn, I'll do it. But go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
But there's like this weird in like society and culture, this like relationship dynamics where it's really hard to have like long-term relationships, right? And I think some of that potentially can stem from boredom. And I think that like when we look at some of the BDSM community, we look at a solution to that, right? I personally, and that's it, I see more long-term relationships in the BDSM community than I do in the vanilla community. And I think part of that is because there's clear defined roles, there's clear defined responsibilities for each other, right? But another big thing is that there's excitement, and there's renewed excitement throughout the relationship.
Agreed. Yeah, and you'll notice in all the great writers, and we're even talking about from back to the Greeks. I mean, the ones, if they ever wrote about sex, I mean, they're writing about things, and you can see how they have a kinky streak to them. I mean, they just do. Even well, I was reading a quote from, I think it was Alexander the Great, and he told his wife Josephine, he wrote to his wife Josephine, "Be home in 3 days. Don't shower." Like, why on the earth? And why does that quote still survive to this day? Why do all these writings from all these people that dwell, but even these are, a lot of them were writers that did not consider themselves kinksters. They didn't consider themselves BDSM people.
Well, I don't think we had those names, right? We didn't have those words.
We may not have had those words, but it's been going on too. You can see the depictions on hieroglyphs of some strange things going on. And but like even these seemingly vanilla people, right? Like people that didn't even take part in those hieroglyphs are writing about things that like signal to our kinky human nature, and they for some reason take off because we have it in us. And like, why on earth would 50 Shades of Grey take off? What is in there that somehow gives us the little warm feeling in our crotchal regions?
So if what we're sitting here talking about is like that a lot of people naturally have this like biological draw to this, then why are more people not enacting it?
Well, yeah, cultural norms, society norms. Obviously, like we've got a lot of things that in different parts of the world, lots of things that influence culture, and you know, I guess there's some cultures that, I mean, you've got like the Karma Sutra in certain societies, right? But in a lot of cultures, the religious aspects overtook some of the other ones. And what's funny is even in some of the religious ones, it makes room for a little bit of stuff. And even in you'll even notice in even in religious communities, there's undertones of like it feeling good that you're in a hierarchy. And I've noticed that even people in vanilla relationships, they just love the idea like, oh, my husband takes care of that. Like they just eat it up, like, you know, even, and I would consider myself a little bit more traditional, and I know just the most classic cornbread basic stuff just hits hard for my kinky side. Like, he makes us dinner. Oh, right, that's kinky to me. Yeah. It's kinky to me. And
it's service.
It's service.
It's devotion.
And why is you could find tons of people that would be like, BDSM, that is so gross, that's degenerate, right? And then you could be like, do you like it when your wife cooks for you?
That's domestic servitude.
Okay.
Right.
Do you love that she puts the groceries away? Oh, okay. Do you control the finances in your... It's just kind of like you guys have certain roles, and you guys love that you do the roles and you admire each other.
Well, I think in vanilla relationships, they don't really... A lot of times, the roles aren't clearly defined.
That's the ones that have trouble.
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but like for my previous vanilla relationships, it was really weird because like I haven't been in a vanilla relationship for... Well, I was married for a year and a half, and then that was like my sabbatical or whatever you want to call it, right?
Sabbatical.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess I lost my train of thought. What did you just...
Even in your vanilla relationships,
the clear defined roles. Like when I was in vanilla relationships, like I'm Sicilian. I was raised very heteronormative. My grandmother's the first person ever to call me master, right? And nonetheless, as society progressed, there was like some kind of attack on the traditional man, which is what I was really raised to be. And then more so, like I was also a dominant man, and but in my vanilla relationships, like for me to be a dominant man wasn't a good thing, because like society and culture was changing that like men were supposed to be a little bit less dominant or a little bit less masculine, right? For me to be a traditional man in any capacity, it was once again kind of a shame. For me to want to be a protector or provider or anything, it was kind of shamed, right? So I'm actually been working on a writing for a very long time that I'm a bad boyfriend because I don't know how to be a boyfriend in today's culture, right? Um, and now that I'm in power dynamics, and now that I pursue these types of relationships, it makes it easier for me to be a good partner because I can define what it means for me to be a partner to this person, or for that person to be a partner to me. Right? So I think that as we move forward as a society, and we normalize, you know, BDSM and polyamory and non-monogamy and other, what I'm trying to coin a new phrase, is intentional relationships, right? We're going in with intentions, right? Like whether we're intentionally going to be in DS, or we're going to intentionally be non-monogamous, or whatever, we are going to sit down and we're going to define what our intentions are with this relationship. And I think that that's a big thing that I hope to see that BDSM does bring into, as it's more normalized, it does bring into relationships, that like open communication goes a long way. I mean,
Yeah.
what is you obviously have some vanilla friends, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Have they ever like questioned you about like your life, or like how you got here, or what it's like?
Oh yeah, they're definitely curious about it, and I'm always the person they run to when they got questions about stuff like that. But yeah, they definitely have some weird questions, and it's funny. You can get weird looks from every single angle. I've had friends and they struggle like my girl, and she doesn't put out but once a month, and then you're like, well, why don't you do free use? And they're like, free use, what's that? You get that? What the, that sounds, I don't know, you know, give you. And then they also find out I don't let my sub touch a door handle. I take off her shoes. I put her socks on. I put her in pajamas.
Oh wait, that free use doesn't sound good no more.
Yeah, I shower her. I dry her off. I baby her. You know, and it's not even just a trade-off. I enjoy both of these things like drastically. But then I can get the look at me from the, you have to do all that, like, and it's like I enjoy doing all that. And your girl would love it if you put a little bit more intention into taking care of her, you know? And you would do well to state your intention and what you expect and your expectations for the relationship up front. And stand on them. And yeah. And so I definitely get weird questions about that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly when you were talking about how some of the traditional aspects of, you know, being a man back then, as they have gotten torn apart. And we know some of the reasons are genuine. Some of them are just backlash from genuine. Some of it is toxic when it's not based around consent. But what came down with a lot of that stuff is clearly stated roles, clearly stated expectations. And in traditional roles, there were clearly, in traditional like relationships, there were clearly stated expectations and roles for relationship, and there were less problems because of it. Now, we all know back then maybe there wasn't enough consent involved, or you know, more pressure, but they worked better because there was a stated roles. And if anybody vanilla could take anything from the BDSM community and bring it into their lives, and I've told my friends this as well, state what you expect, state what you want, what your intentions are, tell them up front, do you want this to be a long relationship or a short one? If you expect sex this much, state it clearly. If you are willing to do this, like these things, ask them what they expect. You know, what makes you feel good? How can I give validation to this relationship too? And you'd be surprised how some of the silliest things can really do it. If anybody vanilla could take the things from BDSM, it would just be like the contracts, the roles, like that is the most beautiful, the consent, and then the considering the anxieties of the other person during exploration of new things or entering a new territory. I love that the BDSM community is so, well, in their talk, is so considerate about how the other person might be feeling when you try new things or experience new things together. I love that. It's so consent conscious, considering another person's feelings as well. And I love that it also is doing that while making sure you get your deep, dark, dirty desire fulfilled as well. That's beautiful.
I posted a rope picture today, and it said the quote with it was, traditions are experiments that worked. Right? And it was perfect because it was a new, like I said, double bamboo suspension. And it, like, I was, as you were talking and as we were talking about like traditional roles, it got me thinking, we're changing tradition as we move forward in society, right? And why traditional roles worked 100 years ago or whatever, for the most part, was because it was defined, right? It was experiments that worked, right? And now, as we as a society and a culture progress, we're making new experiments. And we're figuring out what experiments are going to work, and we're going to create new traditional relationships. And I think that's one of the big things that the vanilla community can get from the BDSM community, is that we got to experiment and we got to figure out what a new traditional relationship looks like, right? Because now there's a lot of traditional polyamory. There's a lot of traditional DS, right? That you could get, you got people that will tell you what a traditional master is, or an old guard master, or whatever. And at the end of the day, I think, like, to get off my soapbox here, is what is tradition for you may not be tradition for somebody else, and that doesn't make yours or anybody else's better or worse. It's just an experiment that worked for you. And I think that, like, as we move forward as a culture and a society, that we all can benefit from more communication and more defining those roles and responsibilities to each other, instead of just, oh, we've been having sexual relationships for 3.5 weeks now, we better be a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Or, oh, I've been spanking your butt for, you know, 1.5 months now, so now you're my submissive, and now I got free use and all the bells and whistles or whatever, right? I think a big thing that I've gotten out of the BDSM community is, the simplest way is, I assume no unless if I'm given a yes.
Informed consent,
right? I assume
enthusiastic.
Yeah. I don't want a yes, I want a fuck yes.
Yep.
Right? I think we've gotten way off topic, but at the same time, like, that's part of the goal of doing the lives, is to have the fluid conversations.
Well, they are important because these are things that these are some of the things that we need to hope that the vanilla community picks up from us. And one of the ways they're going to do this is through films and through, like, I am of the belief way more people have these kinky, at least urges, maybe not acting them out physically, have kinky urges, fantasies, desires than will ever admit. And that's why a lot of these things take off. And as they get more popular, we're going to get more people that come in, and we need to just do our jobs and making sure we keep a culture that talks about consent and you know, like talks about our contracts, our negotiations, our roles, our boundaries. These are some of the best takes. But
Don't you think some of that is even like pop culture? I don't use contracts. You?
I have before.
Do you now?
I have before when things didn't go well. Right.
Okay.
And
but why did you use a contract?
well, because it's good to have things formally stated if they're going awry, right? And or before they go awry. Sometimes the best way to prevent things going awry. And when you're in tricky situations, especially when you're trying to implement BDSM into real life, it can be tricky to navigate certain things. And to still respect everyone and make sure everyone's happy at the end of the day. And you're going to have to do things that you may not always want to do and navigate things you may not want to do to make sure the other person gets what they want, and they're going to have to navigate things that they don't always want to do, make sure you get what you want. And when you can put them both on the plate and say, what can we make work, what can we compromise, what can we give and take for, and that's the best way to come about things. And that's the best part about our community. And so even if the contract is verbal, whatever, it doesn't have to be written, formal. Those are kind of some of the best things. This is what I expect. This is what I'm willing to give. And is that fair? Is that fair? And I think that's the kind of stuff we need to keep talking about our consent-based culture and how considerate we are about other people's feelings. Well, and how considerate we are of our own feelings.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I've seen this with a lot of newbie eager subs. They're so eager to just give up their own desires to please someone else. And have you ever seen subs come in and they're so eager they just get steamrolled by the first person wanting to take advantage of them?
Well, because I mean, like, I think to some level, a submissive desire is simply to please, but they want to please someone that appreciates them, respects their boundaries, and is going to provide that safety, right? I mean, anybody can bark orders, right? And this is where we're actually going to like kind of round back way back earlier in the conversation. Someone brought up like red flags. And they said that a big red flag for them is when someone refuses to educate themselves. And that's a huge red flag for a top or bottom, a dominant or submissive, or just a human in general, if you ask me. If I ever meet someone that's like done growing, like, well, what are you doing for the rest of your life? Are you just pedaling water or doggy paddling? What are you doing? Like, I mean, in my opinion, life's about growth and experience. So I mean, like, I think we'll probably wrap up this. I think we've been broadcasting now for about an hour and a half, give or take. But I think like one of the big things I want to touch at the end is like some of those red flags or possibly green flags. So like for somebody that is not inherently in the BDSM community, hasn't watched all the videos, but has these fantasies, like what are some green flags? They meet Susie at the library, or they meet Bobby or Joni or Jeffy, or I don't even care who the name is. They meet them somewhere at some public space. What would be some indicators that they might be a dominant or they might be a submissive?
In the sense that they already are in the community, or in the sense
but they're not in the community, like, you know, just me, I'm not in the community.
They would be a good one.
Yeah, that if let's just say I'm a dominant, and you know I meet this girl at the grocery store. What things could I look for potentially that might make me believe or make me speculate that they might have those submissive qualities? Or on the opposite, if I'm a submissive and I meet someone out in the public, what could be some green flags or indicators that would tell me that this person might be.
Yep. Willingness to take in new information and not be angry that they didn't know it. That's the best thing. Eagerness to learn. If they're eager to learn more about BDSM and explore it and take on things that they may have to admit they were doing wrong, anything like that, they should just be happy to get that information. They should also be considerate of your feelings and your experience with it too. And one that we don't talk about, I don't feel like enough, they need to know what they want. And they need to be able to state clearly what they want, what they like, what they would expect, and maybe they don't know all of it yet, right? But
I think
they should have an idea.
Don't know.
Yeah, and even some of the doms, they don't know, right? But like, they should have at least an idea of like what's making them feel good, the direction they can go with it. If you're walking in a room and saying, I want to be a dominant, and you don't have any idea what you like, I don't know what feels good. Even I don't know how much of a dominant you are. If you say you're a submissive and you don't know like what that looks like for you at all, I don't know if you're there yet. Now you might have like the desire and the heart to like please, but if you don't have like even an idea of what's going to feel good, and the pop culture things everywhere, I feel like you should have an idea of what looks good to you, because why are you even interested in it if you didn't see something that perked your feelings and your interest there? So I feel like they should have an idea of what they want. That's important too, because people will just go in and they're just willing to do whatever it takes to give you everything that you want and don't even consider their own experience in it as well. Those people are going to get steamrolled. Dominants and submissives. Eager to please, eager to take on new information, happy about learning something they didn't know, have an idea of the direction, we'll say direction, the direction they want to go. And yeah. And
what would be some big things that would turn you off right away? Like, and let's speak overarching, not just like from a submissive standpoint or a dominant, like just as a human standpoint, right?
I really get, but see, having been around a little longer, I get the ick a lot more easier than I used to. Oh, I don't know. If they don't care about my experience in it or your experience in it at all, I mean, that's an instant red flag, right? I know the subs deal with that a lot. Any sub kind of puts themselves out there and some dude just hops in the DMs like, you're going to do this and this is what I like. And it's like, well, first of all, did you even ask what I like?
Yeah.
You know? And,
but a dominant shouldn't ask questions.
What do you mean?
Why would a dominant ask a submissive what they want?
Well, yeah. Why would they do that? Why would anyone ask anyone what they want? Maybe we should just all do what we want and see how the world turns out. And maybe
like a pretty horrible
we could have wonderful relationships if we just stopped caring about what anybody thinks in them except for what we think. No, but for real, like they should care about your experience in it too, and don't just assume, you know. And also, don't assume because you like something that the other person's gonna like it. You know, and if not, can you compromise? Is there something else you could give that they might take that you guys can be like, I'll do this if you do that, even though it's not my thing?
So something that someone put in my head not that long ago was they don't compromise, they collaborate.
I like that. I like that a lot.
You compromise with a used car salesman. You're trying to get the most you can for the least amount. But when you collaborate, you're truly working together.
That's beautiful.
And I think a lot of times, like, for me personally, words are so powerful, right? And even like negotiate, right? Like, no, I don't want to negotiate, because once again, that makes me feel the same thing as that car salesman. I don't want to negotiate. I want to collaborate. I want to build a relationship. I want to build a partnership, right? I don't want to try to get the most for the least,
Yeah.
right?
I like that. Yeah, collaborate. Part of collaborating is negotiation, but yeah, I like that, because the idea of just negotiating implies that, yeah, you're not going to get what you want. Like, and you don't have what anyone would want, really. You're trying to, like, yeah, I like that. But part is negotiation, in a sense. That's just one aspect of collaboration.
I mean, it's just slightly different words that are just a little bit more specific than communication, right? I think like that's probably the biggest green flag in my head, is the ability to communicate, right? I mean, like, how many times, well, I can just speak for myself, like, I've had S types that come up to me and say, I will do anything. And just like you said, I'm gonna hit you in the chin with the scooter. How do you like that?
Yeah.
Right? But nonetheless, I think that there is actually genuinely some submissives that really do have that huge sense of desire to do anything.
Yeah,
Now,
and
I some of it I think is just because of the pop culture influence, right? They see like story, oh,
this is what I'm supposed to do.
yeah, this is the only way I can be a submissive, if I do whatever and I comply. Actually, what was it? Someone's friend of mine said earlier they had an acronym that was called TOAD. Totally obedient and discreet, or something like that. I don't recall. And I'm like, man, that sounds like a pretty amazing submissive, right? But that's fantasy.
Yeah.
Well, heck,
You can get, I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
yeah. Well, that's a whole other tangent.
Yeah, you can get there. But yeah, okay. So willingness and desire. That's obviously got to be there.
Yeah.
Ability to communicate. If they can't even express what they want, how are they going to be able to take on what you want? How are you guys going to even tell each other if they can't communicate properly what you guys want, what you expect? And obviously consideration. They should care about your experience in it.
Yeah.
They should care about how you experience, and they should care about how they even ask you the questions and tell you what they want. They shouldn't demand what they want. They should, explain it and say they can demand that this is what they require, but they can't demand that of you.
Yeah.
And what else? Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've kind of beat on the subject and then beat on a few other subjects, so we might have to come back and revisit this in a few months or something. I'm sure we can talk about a few other topics as well. Is there anything like in closing that you can think of that you'd like to discuss?
I just say, as far as pop culture, for the people in the BDSM community, let's let people enjoy things. Let's not let someone that starts coming and hanging out in our spaces feel like crap and be mean to them because they came here because of a fantasy. Right? Especially when half of us BDSMers are living in our own fantasy too, and we're trying to make it. We're trying to make it a reality. And I like to think about it in the sense that, like, because I don't want to live in a fantasy too, right? I want to make my dynamic work like a fantasy and look like a fantasy. But that's because we're collaborating to make it work well, sometimes by trial and error and eventually like, oh, we, you know, this fell out here, let's put that back in it, and now we can like, so really the fantasy is not a fantasy, it's more of a goal. And a goal that we're striving to reach. And sometimes we have to adjust the post a little bit. Sometimes we have to make more space for something. Sometimes we have to like, you know, cut something out. But we have to like, and not so much where neither of us are unhappy. But I don't want my dynamic to be a fantasy. I want it to be a goal that we're both working towards. And as it gets better and more refined, it would look like a fantasy to others, and I wouldn't even know the difference anymore.
It's your real life.
Because it's my real life, and I'm not a fan of. I mean, if I had nothing else, I guess I would be okay with just scenes from.
So it sounds like a good, like 30,000 foot view of this entire conversation, if it was in my words, would be that the path between fantasy and reality is communication.
Yes, but and also that if I explain what I wanted in my dynamic to someone, right, they would think that I'm living this fantasy, right? And so we as BDSM people all have that kind of thing. And we can't sit there and judge somebody who was interested in 50 Shades of Grey and came to our community because they love the fantasy.
Yeah.
They're learning how to shape and craft their own goal of the perfect dynamic and perfect scene as well. And we should help them and let them enjoy it. Let them enjoy it, first of all.
Yeah.
It's silly that we would be like, oh, 50 Shades of Grey is the worst, and then turn around and go watch Twilight or read some vampire fanfic and then read some werewolf fanfic. Like, we enjoy these things. Like, we click on the article and we got to read the story about the guy getting with the nanny or the babysitter. And we read these articles and we love them. Like, this is just part of like, yeah, sometimes these movies and shows, they have, you know, a bad power imbalance, but like, it's just fantasy, and part of that stuff is, you know, what gets us interested sometimes, even the dirty toxic parts. And you know, people would look at our dreams of perfect BDSM dynamic and think that could look toxic to an outsider too. So I think it's good to let people enjoy things, and we need to be prepared for the onslaught of people to be coming in as our lifestyles get more acceptable, and make sure you get the splinter out of your eye before, or the log out of your eye before you start talking about the splinter in someone else's.
Fair. I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate this conversation. It was great. I hope our listeners got something out of it. I know I did. So
I appreciate you, brother.
all right.
Let's go watch Twilight.
All right. Remember, I'm the guy in this